It took a robbery for me to understand the potential in those black crow eyes. The suet balls hanging from the tree in the backyard were the stolen items, but until then, the small, acrobatic blue tits had had a virtual monopoly over them. The sparrows stayed right where they were in the bushes. The magpies had a go, but since they're not built for hanging upside down, they flew off in shame after a few bungled attempts. The day after I hung up the suet balls, they were gone. All that remained were the 2 green nets wafting in the breeze, and there wasn't a blue tit in sight. Slightly puzzled, I went back into my apartment, fetched a pair of scissors and 2 new suet balls, and went back out to the tree. The mesh bags had been torn open, as though they had been slashed with a knife. No blue tit could have done that. I hung up the new food balls and kept an eye on the tree through the kitchen window. The next morning, I saw a crow sitting on the branch the suet balls were hanging from. I hid behind the kitchen curtain to avoid being seen. The bird cocked its head toward the ball dangling a few inches below. Then it bent down, grabbed the string with its beak, and hoisted the suet ball up a bit. The crow teetered for a few seconds with the ball still dangling well below the branch. Then it fumbled about trying to step on the white cotton string before finally holding the string down with its foot. The bird then opened its beak and shook its head to free itself from the dry cotton string. The suet ball was a couple of inches closer to the bird. The crow teetered a bit more, struggling with the heavy load before once again stepping on the rope and letting go with its beak. The ball was now just below the branch. Next, the bird bent down carefully, gripped the top of the net, and with a jerk of its head pulled up the suet ball like an angler flipping their catch into a boat. The momentum caused the crow to stumble backward, but with a few thrashing wing strokes, it righted itself. And there it stood, with my suet ball safely in its care. It struck me that if I ever had to pull a rope with just one arm, that's exactly how I would do it. If you have ever watched a crow picking apart a garbage bag, you won't need me to explain how quickly this crow tore a hole in the mesh around the suet, which, once released from the net, promptly fell to the ground. And as I watched the crow fly away, heavily laden, I thought about how determined it had been. Nothing about what the crow had done seemed random. It had a plan. Had it learned the trick from someone, or come up with this solution on its own? At the time, I had quite an aversion to crows.